Hi, Michka here and welcome back to another video with me, and today I'm gonna show you guys how I made my Matilda gun from Resident Evil. Not perfect, could have been better, but it's the first gun I have made myself, so I guess I'm proud of that. And there are some materials I wish I had that I didn't have, so I could like fill the cracks a little bit. So I haven't been able to do that, and I think I'm gonna try and make Diva's gun from Overwatch the next time, or maybe gonna start on that pretty soon, and I'll probably film that as well and upload it here on YouTube. But anyway, I'll show you guys how I made my gun. Hello to all my fellow craftsmen, and I just get into it. So I started out in Illustrator because I needed a pattern, blueprint, or whatever you want to call it for my gun. So I just found a picture of the actual gun. It's from the game, a reference to use as a reference picture, and I basically just traced it. And this is not an Illustrator tutorial, so if you guys want an Illustrator tutorial, I could make one later. Also, the pattern is in my info box. I have a link there, so you can go and download it if you want to use it. And it's 100% free, so you can just press on the link and download the pattern I made. And I also do commissions and stuff if you wanna have a specific pattern. But those are, I don't know, maybe $2 or something like that to commission a pattern. It really depends on how hard and complicated it is, but then you can just DM me on Instagram or something like that. But anyway, so you would usually print out the pattern, but I have never really owned a printer, which is huge problem because I can't print out anything, and I just trace my screen like you saw I did, which can be a tiny bit scary because you don't want to damage your screen, but it has worked for me the past years or so. Just be very careful if you do that, and don't use anything that is pointy and hard on your screen. Just be very careful, but I would recommend just printing it out if you can. But I do have a goal on my coffee, which is a printer. If you want to support me to get a printer, you can donate to me on my coffee or share my videos, I guess. And I will be using 2mm for the details, which you won't see before or later in the video. I got all of my pieces cut out. I did glue them before I started sanding them, and I'm using the Patex contact glue, I think it's called, contact glue, it's right. It's the Patex one, which is very good, so I would recommend that one if you don't really know what to get and if you have that brand in your country. But I think that's a brand that you can find worldwide, so I think it's very accessible. And I then waited around 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes I usually wait before I start gluing them together. And yes, you need to have glue on both pieces, and then you wait 15 minutes and then you like slap them together, and the glue is very strong, so it's very good for foam. Something that I forgot to mention is that you also wanna have sharp knife when you cut your foam, which I didn't really have, so it was a real bit hard to cut out the pieces. It was okay in the end because I did sand down the pieces, so they ended up looking good. And I live in a tiny apartment, so sanding is very messy. So I try to have like a big open space, or as big as open I can get it. And then I have my vacuum cleaner close, so I can clean up right after I have sanded, because it's so messy. And please use a respirator, a mask or something, and also glasses to protect your eyes, because you sometimes will get pieces flying around, and you can get it in your eye, and you don't want that. I don't have glasses to use, so that's why I didn't use any, and I know it's bad, but I did use my mask. You saw that I used 2 pieces of 10mm for my main body, and for the, what you call it, the trigger and stuff, I just used one 10mm piece, and I tried to glue it on, like, on the middle. I carved out the ejection port, and then I made an extractor out of 2mm foam that I just cut out and sanded it down, and then I glued it on top, and it doesn't really look that good, I think. I don't know if there are better ways to do it. If you know if there are any better ways to do it, then please tell me. And I also am showing you guys how, or the nibs I used to carve. And I also did the same for the muzzle, or like the front of the gun. I also carved out a little bit there, and I think I did a good job on that one, but that one is a bit easier to like carve a hole, like, I don't know, kinda in the middle, but also on the top of the gun, which was very hard. I also marked the ejection port on both sides of the gun. You only have that on one side, so I only did it on one side, even though you can see that I did draw it on both sides, but you only need it on one side, so you don't have to draw it on both. This is the nib I used to carve out the rear side and the front side. You will see that I did carve out the rear side, but you won't be seeing that I'm carved out the front side. So I'll do that off camera, and I did a lot of the sanding off camera as well. And you can already see how messy I was with the glue, so I don't recommend just slapping the glue on. Try and actually just use glue where you want to glue your piece, like exactly. So then you won't have glue spills and messy glue like this, because it's very hard to get rid of. Even sanding it in like tricky areas is very hard. So I'll probably try and be a bit, I don't know, nicer with the glue, I guess. Try and do a nicer work job with the glue. And as you can see, the glue job got even worse, and that's how the finished piece kind of look like, because even if you paint over it, you will still see the rough edges of the glue, and it looks a bit messy, so try and be a bit, I know, more gentle with the glue. And you also saw that I put in some metal wires into the gun, and that's just for a little bit more support. I tried to fill the cracks of the gun, but I didn't really have anything to fill the cracks with, so I just used this bathroom glue thing, and I wouldn't really recommend using it, but I didn't have anything else, so I just went with that one. You can't really paint over it, so you will kind of see where it is, which kind of sucks, but I decided to do it like that, so it's my own fault. But anyway, and I also wrapped my cutting mat, so I didn't destroy it with the foam primer and glue and all of that. And yes, you need to use a foam primer specifically for your foam, because you can't really use anything else, and if you use anything else, you have to be very careful. You can't really use wood glue. Even though wood glue is a little bit elastic, it still will crack very easily, so I wouldn't really recommend using it. But if you make a foam piece that is very stiff and you know want to be bending a lot, then I guess a wood glue would be fine. But the best thing to get is just a foam primer. Actually, I'm using Hexflex, I think it's called. You can use Plastic as well, but that one doesn't really cover that much. So if you have rough edges, or where you have sanded your piece, because when you sand you get rough edges, and Plastic won't really cover that, so you would probably just go over with whatever foam primer you're using. So if you're using Hexflex like me, you would add that on top of the places where you have sanded it, and then you can spray over with Plastic dip if you're doing a big piece.
But yeah, you still want to cover the rough edges with something that have a bit more high coverage than Plus Deep does, because it doesn't really cover, but it does prime your piece, and you do prime because you don't want your paint to crack, and that's why you prime it before. And it's a very necessary step, unless you want your paint to crack and look kind of messy and ugly, but I wouldn't recommend it. If you have any questions, then just ask me, and I'll try and answer them as good as I can. And if there were things in the video you didn't really understand, or you got lost, or if you have any feedback for me, I would really appreciate that as well. And if you want to see more from me, then please hit the subscribe button. If you don't want to see any more from me, then you are free to just leave without hitting the subscribe button. And if you like this video, then please press like and all of that. I'll see you guys in my next video. Take care, goodbye, Michiko out.
Pew 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 pew. Pew 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 pew. Pew 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 pew. Pew 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 pew. Pew 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 pew.